Good afternoon, welcome to UK Column Live, and perhaps I should also say bonjour, since this is the way we now do it for Olympics in Britain. And welcome to our studio today. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, with Mike Robinson, and for the next 30 minutes we're going to cover some of the things that we think are the more important aspects of the news, which are in slight variance to what you may read in the mainstream papers or see on the BBC. So, of course, at the moment we have news and media in UK overwhelmingly dominated by the Olympics, and we know at least some people in the country spent time on Friday to watch the opening ceremonies. And I think there are a few of the key facts about those ceremonies that we would like to bring to the fore this afternoon. We understand that the overall expenditure for that display on Friday night came to 27 million. We would like to remind viewers that this is a huge sum, but a tiny sum seen against the 9 or more billion pounds that have been found to fund the Olympics as a whole. And we would like to continue the theme that this huge sum of money should be seen against the failings at the moment of successive British governments to be able to look after our schools, our university system, or indeed our university graduates, care homes for the elderly, restructuring of the transport system, or indeed providing the armed forces with appropriate equipment. We have huge shortages apparently in all of those sectors, but we can magic up 9.2 billion for the Olympic Games as a drop of a hat. I would say on a personal note that I found it remarkable that the Olympic ceremony should be hosted and introduced in French as the primary language, to be followed by English. I understand that this was because the head of the International Olympics Committee was present. Whether or not French should have taken precedence over English, I think there are very many people in this country who would say not, and perhaps there should have been recognition at the beginning of the ceremony, and after that the rest of it introduced in English. But perhaps the main thing we should focus on with respect to that incredible display, and it's certainly not one of the things that the mainstream press has picked up on, is the fact that it was overwhelmingly dark. So despite the fact that the original choreography started with quite bright sunshine, fields, and what were attractive country displays of country people doing the sorts of things they did, from maypoles to cricket, it was rapidly transformed into what many of the press and some of the media people described as dark, chaotic drama. And of course the focus was on the Industrial Revolution, for which we can say there is probably some good reason, since it's largely regarded that that started in Britain. But what followed on becomes increasingly interesting, and I think should have interested both members of the Christian and the Muslim community in particular, because we seem to have a move towards the dark arts. And one of the things I'd just like to draw people's attention to is the sequence where supposedly the Olympic opening ceremony was supporting and giving praise to the NHS. Now, it seems to me ironic that at the very time the NHS is being cut to the bone by this government, of course the 9.2 billion pounds has been found for the Olympics. But nevertheless, we had a huge scene of some 300 youngsters on old-fashioned hospital beds, attended by very, very smart nurses in their original nursing uniforms. And I find it interesting that those uniforms were chosen over and above the present uniforms that many of us see in the NHS, because while we might consider some of them to be more functional, the scene would not have been the same if we'd have had green uniforms and trousers and soft plastic shoes as are worn in the NHS today. But from the scene of children, we rapidly switched to children's stories, and it would appear significant that these weren't bright, uplifting and cheerful stories which we may have told our children. We were immediately plunged into the depths of Harry Potter, and of course we were subjected to a 40-foot puppet of Voldemort, the dark wizard from the Harry Potter scenes. What several of the UK column viewers have pointed out to us is that one of the children in particular, a young girl who was clearly enacting being frightened on her hospital bed, was then raised up almost as an offering to Voldemort. And it was at this point that certainly I, and I know many other viewers for UK Column Live, because they've called us or emailed to tell us, started to feel an uneasy sense that there was something rather darker going on in this ceremony. So if we start to really ask what was going on and how this amazing ceremony was created, I think perhaps a little bit of the truth has come out in today's press, where it's been pointed out that the key man in scripting the opening ceremony, a gentleman called Frank Cottrell Boyce, has a very interesting history in that he started out as a TV advisor to Living Marxist magazine. Sorry, I'll correct myself there, Living Marxism magazine. And this was the journal for the British Revolutionary Party. Now, there has been some debate in the mainstream press today where, as usual, there's a sort of, I'll call it a slanging match between the mainstream parties over whether the opening ceremony was socialist or not. And Labour appears to be crowing that they found it to be suitably politically correct and socialist, whereas members of the Tory party are saying that this is nonsense. I think many of our viewers will be fascinating to have a look into the background of Mr. Cottrell Boyce and to ask why somebody who's clearly got such a deeply entrenched and extreme political viewpoint on the world should have been chosen to actually put this Olympic ceremony together. I'll leave viewers and listeners to do their own research on that. But it would appear that far from enhancing the true history of Britain, what Friday evening did is presented supposedly to billions of viewers across the world a very sanitized and politically correct version of what the important points were. Of course, we were then subjected to a huge amount of pop music, dance on stage, culminating in a rapper whose name I can't remember, and I'm not embarrassed to say that I don't really want to remember, because to me this did not represent the mainstream professional skills and social being of Britain at large. It was interesting that within the dance sequences for the Olympics, at one stage we saw a formation of a satanic star, the pentagram, and we also saw a formation of the CND symbol. Now, whilst these only lasted a relatively few minutes, nevertheless, a huge amount of effort had gone into the choreography of that in order to help those symbols appear in front of television viewers. So I think we'd just like to say from UK Column Live that if you haven't seen the Olympic opening ceremony, please get onto the internet and have a look for yourself and see what you think about what was being presented. Perhaps at that point I should just gently say that, of course, there are some very onerous restrictions on who can show what to do with the Olympics. So perhaps you need to do that fairly quickly.
Well, you certainly can't go to YouTube because YouTube's already taking footage of the opening ceremony down on copyright grounds, which is why we're not showing any of it, because we're not going to take that risk.
Right.
So really the only place to go is BBC iPlayer at the moment.
Right. So why do we think this is happening? Because on one hand, we've got the whole organisation of the Olympics saying that countries should be welcoming the Olympics. It's the greatest show on earth. Why should the Olympics team or organisational team not want to get up this publicity for people
well,
to see?
Well, because it's utterly a corporate. It's not about people enjoying themselves. It's utterly a corporate advertising exercise.
Right.
So only the approved corporate sponsors will get access to this kind of thing.
Right. So if people are interested in seeing, what you're going to have to do is go and look at a course at the BBC.
BBC coverage with their wonderful narration all the way through it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was something else that was actually commented on, was the pitiful level of commentary which went on through the Olympics. So if your French was good enough and you could stand the BBC take on it, you might have got something. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens on that. The other thing I'll just emphasise is that a number of people have pointed out to us the fact that under the original signed agreement for the Olympics, whereby countries agree to take on the Olympics, is a clause to say, we understand that there is a clause to say that the only publicity on the Olympics has to be good publicity. So we're now living in a very interesting situation where these vast amounts of money can be spent, and also there is total control over the media and press reporting.
Well, that's reflected in what Ben Fellows said when he attempted to get his story on mainstream media, of course.
Okay. Now, what is the Olympics doing? Well, some people might say that the Olympics is entertaining us at the moment, but it would appear that whilst the Olympics on, we're already seeing a total negation of other important news. And if we have a look across some of the mainstream papers today, the supporting stories appear to be about nothing. We've got, having a look at the Daily Mail at the moment, just get my glasses on so I can see what's going on here. We've got a thing on HMS Hood's Bell, which apparently there's an effort to try and recover at the moment. We've got a father who's killed his daughter and shot his son in the head. We've got a club stabbing. We've got raffle winners. We've got Washington teenage girls suing Backpage.com, claiming that the sex website is responsible for their trafficking. We've got a British yachtsman. Was he murdered by crewmate? So the Daily Mail is certainly into some fairly low-grade news, aside from the Olympics. And that's followed across the Daily Mirror. We've got a love rival. We've got perverts getting violent rape DVDs in jail. We've got drug deaths. We've got a rugby club birthday beating. So the mainstream press is definitely going out of its way to cheer us up, aside from the Olympics. We've got a little bit on the power outage in India, and 47 dead in an Indian train fire. And we've got a little bit of how the Treasury is planning to water down the planning laws again. So it does appear that at the moment the Olympics is being used to
so nothing about the two
suppress,
the two key issues which rumble on, which are Syria and the financial collapse.
Yeah. So
staggering, isn't it?
What can we tell viewers about Syria at the moment? I've got a little which sorry, go on.
Well, it's just interesting to continue to contrast what there is in the British mainstream media with what there is, for example, in the Russian mainstream media. So Britain continues to its diatribe against Assad. Russia's pointing out that actually Assad has a lot of support within Syria, and more and more young males in particular are volunteering to fight the rebels. And I'll just reiterate, what I said in one of the shows last week, these rebels are terrorists. You know, the last big success that they had was a suicide bombing. This is Al-Qaeda tactics, and if we look at what's going on right across the region, we're seeing Al-Qaeda being supported right across the region. We're starting to see violence increasing in Iraq, which is being labelled as a spillover from Syria. We're seeing Turkey installing surface-to-air missiles right along the Syrian border. Quite a number of Syrians leaving the conflict areas and running to Turkey. So the situation is not improving there, and it is, it's absolutely clear that it is being supported by what are termed as Al-Qaeda groups. And since our own government is clearly providing them with logistical and training support, we've got to say that our own government is therefore involved in supporting terrorism.
Yeah. And we seem to be seeing at the moment the Olympic Games is being used to occupy the people. I mean, it is a mirror of Rome, where we're providing fun and games and amusement for the people, whilst behind the scenes these very, very serious world international events are unfolding, and there's no real coverage at the moment. And I think it's significant that certainly the BBC is only producing one side of the Syrian conflict. There is only reports of these very nebulous sources for information from the so-called rebel side. The Syrian Observatory is something which the BBC is commenting on and using the information from. But the viewer in Britain is not getting any deep background into where the information is really coming from, how accurate it is, and what the political agenda is of the source of that information.
Well, there's one other news source that I would actually like to highlight as being as providing fairly disgraceful coverage on the whole thing, and that is Channel 4 News. Now, I would say that in general, Channel 4 News's coverage of most things is better than the average in Britain, but in this case, I believe that their coverage of Syria is atrocious, and I don't know why that particular subject is being dealt with in the way that they are, but it's absolutely biased, one-sided coverage.
Yeah. I hesitate to just jump back a little bit to the Olympics, but the two do link together, because of course one of the people who figured in the Olympic ceremony, flag-carrying part of the ceremony, was Shami Chakrabarti, the director from Liberty. So this lady was chosen by whom I don't know, but was chosen to be representative of great campaigner for liberty, somebody who's achieved special things for this country. But of course, the Olympic Committee seemed to have had very short memory that this was also a lady who was sat on the committee of the London School of Economics, while the London School of Economics was taking money from the Gaddafi regime. So we seem to have a little bit of closeness between this lady and money that was taken from foreign dictators. But the person is then presented to us in the Olympics as being somebody that we should be looking up to. So I think there is definitely an unpleasant propaganda agenda which is going on at the moment with the British government. And to me, at least, it seems quite clear that the Olympics are being used as a smokescreen whereby these wars overseas can continue. Yeah. But there's more on the economic front that we're not hearing at the moment.
Well, I mean, no, well, obviously the main economic story is the announcement that everything is going to be done to save the euro, and that caused the sudden inflows of money back into the stock market again, right. Pumping up the price again of the FTSE 100 and every other sort of major index. And the news today is that actually the European Central Bank is going to be the next organisation to take a haircut on Greek bonds. So this is they're just going to pull out every possible stop in order to try to save this dying euro system, and you've got to say that all that they're doing is simply making matters worse. That is not going to, that euro system is unsavable. It is utterly bankrupt, and this needs to be seen as a direct attack on the taxpayer, on the average individual in the European, the broader European community, if I can put it that way. I'm not talking about the European community in the political sense there. The other thing that I was just, it just continues to stagger me is the mainstream press excuses for why things go bad economically. So another article today, this time in the Telegraph, and I'm not singling the Telegraph out at all, because they all do it, and it doesn't seem to matter what the statistics that they're talking about. So today they're talking about mortgage approvals, but it could be about jobs, or it could be about the value of sterling. It really can be anything, and they always try to find some fairly lame reason for why the numbers are so bad. So in this case, the Telegraph article starts: mortgage approvals and lending slumped in June, Bank of England data showed, reflecting broader economic weakness due to extra public holidays and wet weather. Well, I'm sorry, but it's nothing to do with extra public holidays and wet weather. It's everything to do with the fact that the financial system is dead as we know it. So, so the mainstream media is always trying to push everybody into believing that things like rain have significant effects, and rain causes recessions. Well, rain doesn't cause recessions. Otherwise, Britain's economy historically would have been traditionally much worse than it was. So this is typical. Propaganda, yeah, and absolutely.
Do we know the source of this? We're saying the Telegraph, but is this actually a named journalist it's come from?
Rachel Cooper in this case, but as I say, I'm not singling out anybody in particular, because this goes right across the board in the mainstream media, and I don't know whether they're simply rehashing press releases out of the Bank of England or what, but it seems to be a fairly uniform, a fairly standard right across the board excuse for why certain things happen.
Yeah.
In fact, the reason that mortgage approvals have collapsed again is because the banks don't have any money to lend. That's one reason. They can't afford to take the risk of lending in the way that they were before. So they're not lending on the terms that they were before, with self-certification and stuff like this. Right. So they, because the rules are tighter, they can't lend in the quantities that they were lending before. So this is a fundamental issue with the housing market. It's not simply a few wet days.
Yeah, there was an article in the Guardian here which says that retail bankruptcies rise 10% as high street coal continues, and it's pointed out that Clinton Cards and Game are amongst the victims as the retail industry bucks the trend for fewer corporate insolvencies. So we're getting a little bit of a look here that there are real problems at the moment out there. We're seeing it with the farmers. We're seeing it with anybody who is still in any form of manufacturing. But at the moment, there's no comment on this.
Well, I mean, the high street in particular is an interesting case, because traditionally we've had January sales in this country. Yeah. But we have had a sale in this country since January. It hasn't been a few days of sales to usher in the new year and get the sort of retail market started again after the holidays. Yep. This has been just a continuous sale right the way through, and we're not talking about 10-20% off either. We're talking 50, 60, 70, 80% off in some cases, because shops are just unable to move their stock at the prices that they expect to be able to sell it for. Now, why is that? Because the media is basically lying to us about the reality, and the reality is that people don't have the money to spend on the white plastic rubbish that they were spending it on before. So high street. I mean, Plymouth is maybe indicative of the country as a whole, but Plymouth, centre of Plymouth now is decimated in terms of the number of shops there. But aside from that, there's been a massive consolidation of the sort of logos and brand. The shop brands may stay the same. Game may still be there, but a lot of these companies are being consolidated, and they're maintaining the brands, but they're being bought up by large corporates.
Yeah. Well, PricewaterhouseCoopers here is saying that the retail sector had 426 businesses go to the wall in the second quarter. That was up from 386 a year ago. And then later on they're talking about 9,111 insolvencies in the construction and manufacturing since 2010. But what's I think fascinating here, if I can just find it again, is it says the overall reduction in insolvencies is expected to fuel hopes that there will be an Olympics-assisted economic recovery in the third quarter of 2012. So this is Mr. Blair and Cameron's post-Olympic boost, presumably. Do you believe that's real?
What can you say about that?
Yeah, well, it is quite incredible. We have an Olympics where nobody can move, talk, or sell chips because of the corporate stranglehold over things, and I believe that part of the Olympic area has now been sold off to Qatar or a similar country. So we're already starting to pass real estate that the British taxpayer has funded. We're beginning to pass over to foreign nations. So what's really going on here? Something serious at the moment is happening within within economics in UK. Ordinary people are suffering, but we're just not talking about it in the mainstream press. It's quite amazing.
Right.
What have you got?
Right. Okay. Well, there were just two other things. Yep. Are we closing now?
That's fine.
Right.
I just one little point on the BBC.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring home to people. It has been reported in the paper, but I think it should be brought into the heart of things that we've got the situation where the BBC's had a new Director General, George Entwistle, selected by Lord Patten. Lord Patten, of course, a great common purpose supporter, and the BBC has spent hundreds of thousands of pounds of public money on common purpose. So we've chosen a new Director General, and then the BBC has used a recruiting company, Egon Zehnder, in order to find a Director of Vision. And the company has done a fantastic job, because the Director of Vision happens also to be George Entwistle. And so the BBC licence payer is now going to be charged £364,000 for the privilege of finding a man who's been working with the BBC for 23 years.
Yeah.
So this is good efficiency with public money.
Well, it has to be said that headhunting, these companies do make money, huge amounts of money, by doing exactly this kind of thing within big corporations. It's staggering. Yeah.
So there we are. Anyway, we'll see what Mr. Entwistle has to report on the really serious things going on in the world in the UK.
Okay. So apologies for sort of jumping the gun there, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has been making donations. We've had, particularly since we started the UK Column Live, the number of donations that's coming in is fantastic, and we can't do this with we've got internet connections and stuff to pay for. So the donations are ranging from a couple of pounds to a couple of £100, and I just want to say thank you very much to everybody that's done that.
Can we just to reinforce where does the money go? Obviously, when we're producing the UK column, we have the print costs, but we also have the costs of sending those papers out to people who've kindly taken subscriptions. And the massive recent increase in postal charges has really hurt us, as it has businesses out there in the general field. So the production of the UK column is one of the things, but also it's been your generosity that's allowed us to get in all of the IT equipment that's now allowing us to get UK Column Live working, and it's been really quite remarkable, the positive comments we've had.
And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we've added a text chat box to the UK Column Live page.
Right.
So unfortunately we weren't looking at it today, but for future programmes we will be looking at that, and if people have any questions or any comments to make while we're on air, then please use it. Okay.
Should we just mention upload capability and the quality of video and things?
Well, we are installing a new line, which will hopefully improve the upload quality or the quality of the stream as it gets to people at the other end. These are all incremental. You know, as we have the money, we will make these incremental changes and just improve the thing as we go forward, if I'm allowed to use that term.
Yes.
You know, hopefully in the next few weeks people will see an improvement in. You know, I know we've had a couple of people commenting on sound dropping and stuff like this. Well, you know, this is the limitation of the equipment that we're using.
Right.
We're just
and also the telephone capability, or Skype and telephone capability.
Well, that's more or less here now. So we did that the first Skype interview last week with Mr. LaRouche, and we're going to do that with many other people in the coming weeks. So,
excellent. So UK Column Live will be working hard to bring other interesting and informed people on the show for interviews, so that we can try and get out more and more information about what's really happening. And it's great to see people responding by giving us more information or pointing us at people that they feel we should interview. Okay, so looking at the clock, we're at the end. Well, we've just overrun of our 30 minutes today. So I'm going to say thank you for joining us. We've got a packed week coming up. Obviously, we're going to keep a wary eye on the Olympics. We're very interested in what's happening with security in London. And we will also comment tomorrow on the critical mass arrests, which is some 182 cyclists that were arrested after a protest. Okay, so it's goodbye from us at the UK Column Live, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.